year is 1786. Across the waters of the Malay Peninsula, a small island called Pulau Pinang enters the pages of our history. For generations, we have been taught a simple story that Penang was peacefully ceded to the British by the Sultanate of Kedah to a mutual agreement. But was it really that simple? This documentary asks a fundamental question. Was the acquisition of Pulau Pinang truly legitimized by a formal treaty, or did the real story involve confusion, pressure, and broken promises?
The convergence of need and opportunity brought together two key figures, Sultan Abdullah Mukarram Shah of Kedah and Francis Lake, the EIC representative. Their negotiation would set in motion a decision that changed history.
The truth of the Penang story lies in what Francis Lake promised, and whether those promises were ever formally recognized. Historical accounts suggest that Lake assured Sultan Abdullah that the British would provide military protection against the Siamese or Burmese troops. In return, Kedah would allow the British to establish a settlement on Penang. But here is where the story becomes complicated. Kedah believed that the agreement included British military support, a defensive alliance, a partnership that respected Kedah sovereign. Sovereignty.
Okay, ulang balik Kedah sovereignty balik.
But here is where the story became complicated. Kedah believed that the agreement included British military support, a defensive alliance, a partnership that respected Kedah sovereignty. The British, however, interpreted things very differently. When the Sultan later requested the promised assistance, the British government denied that such a treaty exists. They insisted Francis Lake had overstepped his authority, and claiming no binding agreement had been signed.
So what actually happened? There was no formal written and ratified treaty presented by the British at the time of occupation. What Kedah considered a promise, the British treated as an informal negotiation. And so, in 1786, Francis Lake landed on Pulau Pinang, raised the Union Jack, and declared it as a British possession. Without clear legal framework, Kedah believed that they were owed. The expectation of Kedah and the actions of the British were no longer aligned. The aftermath was turbulent. When Siam attacked Kedah soon after, the Sultan appealed to the British for the military support he believed had been promised. But help never came. Kedah stood alone. Meanwhile, British control over Penang grew stronger. They expanded settlements, reinforced fortification, and formalized their authority. What began as a cooperative request for protection gradually transformed into a permanent colonial rule. Later, historical writing offered simplified the narrative, describing Penang as being peacefully ceded. But the actual story is far more contentious. To this day, historians debate the legal and moral legitimacy of Britain's claim. Was it misunderstanding, a diplomatic failure, or deliberate manipulation of Kedah vulnerability?
The events of 1796 remind us that history is rarely black and white. Pulau Pinang's recognition was not a straightforward agreement, but a complex moment shaped by politics, pressure, and unfulfilled promises. It has security fears, combined British strategic ambition, with a situation where aspirations clash with below. And the absence of a clear formal treaty leaves lingering questions about the ability of the British operations. Sweden back, this story encourages us to examine colonial history with a critical mind. Understanding that and behind every simple event lies a different background to the history is not just about what happened, but about how we choose to rule.